Why your avoidant partner stops trying after marriage. It is a deeply confusing experience when the person who once pursued you, charmed you, and made you feel special suddenly becomes distant, and it often happens after the vows are exchanged. You may find yourself wondering, why did they stop trying? What changed? But here's the hard truth. For many avoidant partners, marriage doesn't feel like the beginning of connection. It feels like the beginning of pressure. Avoidant individuals often struggle with emotional intimacy, not because they don't care, but because closeness triggers old wounds, fears of being engulfed or losing control. And ironically, the commitment of marriage can awaken those exact fears. In the early stages of dating, everything felt safer for your avoidant partner. There was space, novelty, and the illusion of freedom. Pursuing you didn't threaten their emotional independence. It felt like a game they could control. But once the relationship becomes legally and emotionally binding, the stakes change. They begin to feel trapped by the very intimacy they once chased. So instead of leaning in, they pull back. They stop doing the small things. They stop checking in emotionally. They stop trying, not because they stopped loving you, but because they never learned how to love without feeling suffocated. You might notice subtle changes first: less eye contact, fewer compliments, emotional withdrawal during conflict. They might start spending more time at work, zoning out with distractions, or acting irritated by your attempts at connection. These aren't accidents. These are protective behaviors. For the avoidant, connection equals danger. Closeness threatens their sense of autonomy, and the deeper the bond, the more exposed they feel. So instead of working through the vulnerability, they build walls to feel safe again. But for you, those walls feel like rejection. What makes this harder is that they rarely communicate their discomfort. Avoidants often weren't taught how to express emotions safely. They grew up in environments where vulnerability was punished, neglected, or ignored. So when they begin to feel emotionally flooded in a marriage, they don't say, "I'm scared" or "I feel overwhelmed." Instead, they go quiet. They detach. They may even gaslight you into thinking you're the problem for needing too much. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for basic intimacy, but to them that feels like too much because they never learned how to receive or give it consistently. Many partners in this dynamic feel like they're going crazy. You start questioning your worth. You wonder what you did wrong to cause the shift. You replay memories from the dating phase, looking for clues. But the truth is, the shift likely had very little to do with you and everything to do with the internal panic avoidance experience when real closeness arrives. In fact, the more secure and loving you are, the more threatened they may feel, not because you did anything wrong, but because they don't trust the safety of intimacy, and marriage forces them to face it daily. You may also notice that your efforts to fix the distance only make things worse. The more you ask for attention, the more they retreat. The more you cry, the more they go cold. This can create a toxic cycle where one partner chases and the other withdraws until both are exhausted. Avoidants often stop trying not because they stopped caring, but because trying feels like vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like danger. Their emotional numbness is a coping mechanism. It is not an excuse, but it explains why they seem to shut down right when you need them most. So what can you do if you're married to an avoidant partner who stopped trying? The first step is to stop chasing them emotionally. This is hard, especially when you're craving connection. But pulling back doesn't mean giving up. It means protecting your emotional energy. Focus on grounding yourself instead of fixing them. Avoidants tend to respond better when there's emotional space, not pressure. Set boundaries around how much distance you'll accept. And most importantly, stop negotiating your worth just to get scraps of their attention. If your partner truly values the marriage, your self-respect may be the wake-up call they need. Sometimes avoidants only begin to reflect on their behavior when they sense your energy shifting. When they feel you're no longer emotionally dependent on them, it breaks their illusion of control. At that point, real conversations can begin, not about blame, but about healing the patterns that block emotional connection. Couples therapy can help, but only if both partners are ready to be honest about their wounds. If not, you may have to decide how long you're willing to stay in a marriage where one person has emotionally checked out. Marriage with an avoidant is not always doomed, but it is emotionally demanding. It requires patience, education, and often a lot of self-healing on your end. Just remember, it is not your job to be their therapist. You deserve a relationship where emotional effort flows both ways. If they've stopped trying, you do not need to keep bending yourself to keep the connection alive. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to stop trying too.